Something is happening inside Costco warehouses right now that most members have completely missed. It is not a sale. It is not a new product launch. It is the quiet removal of 14 specific items. Not seasonal products, not limited time items, permanent inventory that has been there for years. And if you walk through your local warehouse today, you would have no idea anything was wrong. The shelves still look mostly full. The signs still show the regular prices. Everything looks normal. That is exactly how a permanent discontinuation works. It disappears quietly before most people notice it is gone. Here is what makes this different from a standard grocery store pulling a slow-moving product. Costco carries only around 4,000 products total. A standard grocery store carries closer to 30,000. When Costco cuts an item, there is no backup SKU waiting to fill that shelf position at the same price. The item simply disappears, and for many of these 14 products, no other retailer offers the same format or price. One item on this list has already seen a 90% price increase at competing stores over the past 18 months. Another has a documented shelf life of 25 years and is still getting harder to find in bulk format. A third is disappearing because of a supply crisis in a single U.S. state that has no domestic backup. By the end of this video, you will know all 14, the real reason behind each one, and what to do this week. Let's go. Number 14. Kirkland's Signature Canned Chicken in the large multi-pack format. This one surprises people because canned chicken seems like one of the most basic staples imaginable. But the numbers behind what is happening to this specific product are worth understanding completely. 3 years ago, Kirkland's canned chicken multi-pack cost around $14 for 6 cans at most warehouses. Today, that same pack runs $22 to $26 at the locations that still carry it consistently. That is a price increase of over 70% in under 3 years for what is supposed to be a budget staple. But the price increase is not even the real story. What is driving it is worth understanding in full. Poultry processing in the United States is concentrated among a very small number of large facilities. When avian flu hits those facilities, the supply chain for canned chicken contracts almost immediately. The U.S. has experienced 3 of its most significant avian flu outbreaks in recorded history since 2022. Each outbreak removes millions of birds from the processing pipeline within just a few weeks. When processor capacity drops, manufacturers prioritize fresh and refrigerated chicken over canned product. Canned chicken requires additional processing steps, additional packaging costs, and carries lower margins. When raw supply gets tight, it is one of the first formats cut at the production level, not the retail level. This is the part that most people miss. The shortage decision happens upstream, long before shelves go empty. By the time your local Costco stops stocking it, the decision was made months earlier at the processor. Warehouse Club members across multiple states are already describing this pattern in Costco's own forums. Locations running out and not restocking for 6 to 8 weeks. Shipments arriving incomplete or not at all. Multi-packs quietly replaced by single cans at a significantly higher per-unit price with no announcement. Here is why the nutritional case for stocking this item now is stronger than most people currently realize. A single can of quality canned chicken delivers 20 to 25 grams of complete protein per serving. It requires no refrigeration, no cooking, and no preparation beyond opening the can and draining the liquid. In any situation where power is out or fresh protein is unavailable for an extended stretch, that combination matters. The shelf life on properly sealed canned chicken runs 3 to 5 years under normal storage conditions. Buy the multi-pack format now, before Costco finishes transitioning away from it at your specific warehouse. What comes next shows what happens when a shortage is not driven by disease, but by the geography of a single crop. Number 13. Kirkland Extra Virgin Olive Oil in the 2-liter format. This one catches members off guard because olive oil has been a Costco staple for well over a decade. Start with one number that explains everything happening to the global olive oil market right now. Global olive oil production dropped by over 50% in key producing regions across 2 consecutive drought years. Spain, Italy, and Greece together produce close to 70% of the world's olive oil supply in a normal year. All three were hit by simultaneous multi-year droughts that devastated harvest at the same time. And here's the part that makes this difficult to fix. Olive trees take 5 to 10 years to fully recover. The supply reduction you are seeing in stores today cannot be reversed in the next several growing seasons. This is not a temporary disruption with a clean resolution timeline. It is a structural, multi-year shift. Costco's 2-liter Kirkland olive oil was selling for around $15 just 3 years ago at most locations. The same container now costs between $28 and $34 at locations that still have it available in stock. That is more than a 100% price increase for a product that has been a Costco value staple for years. Costco procurement teams are reporting that locking in consistent pricing for bulk olive oil is no longer viable. When Costco cannot source a product consistently at a price its members expect, it discontinues the format. Olive oil is one of the few cooking fats with meaningful concentrations of polyphenols and monounsaturated fats. It functions simultaneously as a cooking fat, a flavor base, a food preservative, and a caloric density booster. In a long stretch of limited food variety, olive oil transforms bland, shelf-stable staples into something edible. Most people do not fully appreciate that dimension of olive oil until they are actually in that situation. Sealed bottles keep quality for 18 to 24 months, stored away from heat and light in reasonable conditions. Buy as much as your budget allows right now. This category will not get cheaper on any visible timeline. Number 12. Kirkland grass-fed butter in the large salted format. Butter seems like one of the most stable grocery products imaginable, and that assumption is now incorrect. The U.S. butter supply has developed a structural vulnerability most consumers are not tracking at all. America's dairy herd is currently at its smallest size in modern recorded history, and it is still declining. Feed cost, labor cost, and regulatory cost have pushed thousands of small dairy operations out of business entirely. When herd size drops, milk production drops, and butter is typically one of the first products to feel the shortage. U.S. butter inventories are currently running at some of the lowest levels seen in the past 15 years. Costco's grass-fed option was already a premium product, and it is now facing consistent sourcing challenges. The grass-fed designation requires specific pasture access standards that dramatically narrow the available supplier pool. When Costco cannot maintain consistent product quality at the price point its members expect, it exits the category. Here is the practical case for prioritizing butter before it disappears from your local warehouse entirely. Butter is one of the few cooking fats that can be converted into ghee, clarified butter that needs no refrigeration. Ghee carries a shelf life of 1 to 2 years at room temperature when properly sealed in a clean container. It delivers concentrated caloric density, fat-soluble vitamins, and flavor complexity no other shelf-stable fat matches. Buy the multi-pound packs, clarify a portion into ghee, and you have a fat reserve that genuinely lasts. The item that follows this one has a shortage driven not by drought or disease, but by a deliberate quota decision. Number 11. Kirkland canned wild Alaskan salmon in the large multi-can format. Most people treat canned salmon as interchangeable with other canned fish, and that misunderstanding is costing them. Wild Alaskan salmon has a nutritional profile that is genuinely distinct from farmed salmon and other canned fish species. The omega-3 concentration in wild sockeye salmon runs significantly higher than in farmed Atlantic salmon products. Wild Alaskan salmon fisheries operate under strict annual catch quotas set by federal regulatory bodies each year. When ocean temperatures shift, salmon migration patterns change, and the allowable catch figures drop significantly. Alaska salmon runs have shown documented below-average yields in multiple key fisheries over the past several years. When commercial harvest quotas fall, the canning industry receives less raw fish to process into shelf-stable product. Costco's multi-can program relies on consistent bulk sourcing that becomes impossible to maintain in a variable harvest year. A single can of wild sockeye salmon delivers more bioavailable omega-3 than most concentrated fish oil supplements. Research consistently links omega-3 deficiency, measurable over weeks rather than months, to declines in cognitive and immune function. In an extended disruption where fresh fish is unavailable, canned wild salmon becomes genuinely difficult to replace. The shelf life on properly sealed canned salmon runs 3 to 5 years under reasonable storage conditions. Buy the Costco multi-pack while it is still there. The sourcing trajectory for this specific product is not improving. What comes next is smaller and cheaper than anything so far, but what it does for your body over weeks is not small at all. Number 10. Kirkland freeze-dried fruit in the large canister format. Most people have walked past this product dozens of times without understanding what they were actually looking at. Freeze-dried fruit is not dehydrated fruit. The process is fundamentally different, and the outcome is dramatically better. Freeze-drying removes 98% of moisture while preserving close to 97% of the original nutritional content. Standard dehydrated fruit retains a fraction of that nutrition and carries a shelf life measured in months, not years. Properly sealed freeze-dried fruit in a nitrogen-flushed canister carries a documented shelf life of 25 years. That shelf life makes it one of the most efficient vitamin C and micronutrient storage options available at retail. Here is the dimension that most prepping content skips over entirely and that most people do not think about. Vitamin C deficiency becomes medically significant within 4 to 6 weeks of elimination from the diet. A scurvy-level deficiency, the kind that wiped out entire naval expeditions, can develop faster than most people expect. A standard rice, beans, and canned meat stockpile provides almost zero dietary vitamin C whatsoever. Freeze-dried strawberries, raspberries, or blueberries fill that gap with a single tablespoon per day serving. Costco has carried large-format freeze-dried fruit canisters, but is rationalizing them out of permanent inventory. The freeze-drying equipment required is expensive, highly specialized, and available at only a handful of U.S. facilities. Those facilities compete for capacity with military and federal emergency management contracts throughout the year. When Costco cannot lock in consistent supply at acceptable margins, the format disappears from the buying plan. Buy the large canisters now. The price per serving at warehouse scale is simply not available anywhere else. The next item is one that many preppers already know about, but almost nobody stocks in a format that actually makes sense. Number 9. Kirkland raw honey in the 5-pound format. Honey is the one item on this list where the shelf life argument alone fully justifies buying it right now. Archaeologists have recovered edible honey from Egyptian tombs sealed more than 3,000 years ago. The chemistry of raw honey, low moisture content, high acidity, trace hydrogen peroxide, prevents microbial growth indefinitely. Honey stored correctly today will be just as usable in 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years without meaningful degradation. Very few foods anywhere on Earth can legitimately make that claim, and most of the ones that can cost far more. But the supply picture around domestic honey has been getting quietly worse for several years running. U.S. domestic honey production has declined by roughly 30% over the past decade due to colony collapse disorder. The United States now imports the majority of its commercial honey supply from a small number of international sources. Those imports are now subject to significant new tariffs that have raised the cost of wholesale honey substantially. Costco's 5-pound raw honey format was already among the best value options at any retail level in the country. The combination of domestic production collapse and import tariff pressure is making that pricing impossible to sustain. Medical-grade honey is used in clinical wound care worldwide. It functions as a documented natural antimicrobial agent. It functions as a natural cough suppressant with peer-reviewed studies supporting its effectiveness over common alternatives. It provides rapidly metabolized carbohydrates for quick energy when access to conventional food sources is limited. And it substitutes directly for refined sugar in virtually every cooking application without any recipe adjustment. Given the indefinite shelf life, there is no rational downside to buying significantly more than you think you need. Number 8. Kirkland coconut oil in the large format jar. Coconut oil occupies a specific position in the cooking fat category that most stockpilers consistently overlook. It is one of the only cooking fats that remains genuinely shelf-stable at room temperature without refrigeration. Refined coconut oil carries a documented shelf life of 2 years or longer in a sealed container stored properly. No rotation schedule required, no refrigeration needed. It simply sits and stays viable in your pantry. The global coconut oil supply is concentrated almost entirely in the Philippines, Indonesia, and India. When typhoons, monsoon disruptions, or labor shortages hit those regions, global supply contracts quickly. The past 3 years have seen significant weather-related disruptions to coconut cultivation in multiple key regions. Costco's large format coconut oil was priced at around $10 to $12 just 2 years ago at most warehouse locations. Today, it has been replaced by smaller sizes at higher per ounce cost at the locations that still carry it at all. In a situation where other cooking fats are unavailable, coconut oil can substitute for butter, vegetable oil, and shortening. The medium-chain triglycerides in coconut oil are metabolized differently, providing faster energy availability than long-chain fats. Buy the largest format you can find now. The per-ounce cost at Costco scale is simply not replicated elsewhere. The next item looks completely unremarkable until you understand what happens to a household without it for 30 days. Number 7. Kirkland Shelf-Stable Evaporated Milk in the large case format. Evaporated milk is one of the most underrated items in the entire emergency preparedness and stockpiling space. It delivers protein, fat, calcium, and fat-soluble vitamins in a package that requires no refrigeration until opened. A single can, when reconstituted with equal parts water, functionally replaces fresh, whole milk in any application. For households with children, infants, or elderly members, that substitution capability has direct practical value. The dairy herd reduction affecting butter is the same structural force putting pressure on evaporated milk supply. When raw milk supply drops, processors prioritize fluid milk and cheese because those categories carry higher margins. Evaporated milk, like canned chicken, is a lower margin product that gets cut first when processing capacity is constrained. Multiple Costco members and regional forums are reporting case formats being replaced by smaller 6-packs. The per-unit savings at the case level are disappearing, and once they are gone, they rarely come back at that price. The shelf life on commercially sealed evaporated milk runs 2 to 5 years under standard storage conditions. In a long stretch without fresh dairy, evaporated milk becomes one of the most valuable items in the entire pantry. Stock the case format now while Costco still offers it. The pricing gap with standard grocery stores is significant. Number 6. Kirkland Instant Oats in the large canister format. Oats are one of the most calorie-efficient, cost-efficient, and nutritionally complete shelf-stable foods at any price point. A single cup of dry oats delivers close to 300 calories, significant fiber, and meaningful iron and B vitamin content. The global oat supply has been under pressure from drought years across the primary producing regions of Canada and Russia. Canada produces roughly 60% of U.S. imported oats, and recent harvests have been significantly below historical averages. Processing costs, packaging cost, and transportation cost have all risen simultaneously across the entire oat category. Costco's large canister was a clear per-serving price leader that is now being squeezed by margin compression on every side. Multiple warehouse locations are already reporting the large canister replaced by smaller bags at higher per-ounce pricing. When sealed properly in airtight containers away from heat and moisture, oats can maintain full quality for 30 years. That extreme shelf stability, combined with a caloric density, makes oats among the highest value storage foods available. Oats require nothing but boiling water, a preparation achievable under virtually any disruption scenario imaginable. Buy the Costco canister format while it remains available, then transfer to sealed Mylar for extended long-term storage. Number 5. Kirkland Natural Peanut Butter in the large twin-pack format. Peanut butter is universally recommended as a survival food, but what is happening to the supply chain is not widely known. The United States experienced significant peanut crop failures in multiple southeastern states across the past 3 growing seasons. Georgia, Alabama, and Florida produce roughly 50% of U.S. peanuts, and drought hit all 3 states repeatedly. Natural peanut butter specifically, with no added oils or stabilizers, is more vulnerable than processed varieties to these disruptions. It requires higher quality peanuts and stricter quality control, which becomes harder to maintain during a short harvest. Costco's natural peanut butter twin pack was priced at around $10 to $12 as recently as 2 years ago. Today, that twin pack runs $16 to $20 at locations that still stock it, which is itself becoming inconsistent. Peanut butter delivers roughly 190 calories, 8 grams of protein, and 16 grams of fat per standard serving. That caloric and macronutrient density makes it one of the most efficient survival foods you can store per dollar spent. Commercially sealed natural peanut butter maintains quality for 1 to 2 years without refrigeration in standard conditions. Add extra jars to your next Costco run. The price gap between Costco and standard grocery stores is consistently significant. What comes next is the single most purchased shelf-stable protein in the United States, and its supply is quietly shrinking. Number 4. Kirkland Solid White Albacore Tuna in the large multi-can format. Albacore specifically, the white solid pack variety, requires a very different fishery from skipjack or chunk-light tuna. Albacore populations in the North Pacific, where most U.S.-bound product originates, have shown documented decline over recent years. International fishing management bodies reduced albacore catch quotas in the most recent annual stock assessment. When quotas fall, the premium white albacore product feels the shortage first, because it has a narrower supplier pool. Costco's solid white albacore multi-pack was priced at around $16 for 8 cans just 3 years ago. Today, those cases run $24 to $28 where available, a nearly 60% price increase in under 3 years. Albacore tuna delivers complete protein with a strong amino acid profile and meaningful selenium content per serving. Selenium supports thyroid function and immune response, and it is genuinely difficult to find in shelf-stable food formats. In a food reserve, tuna fills the complete protein gap that rice, beans, and grains simply cannot address on their own. The shelf life on commercially sealed canned tuna runs 3 to 5 years under standard storage conditions. Stock the multi-can format now. Individual cans from a standard grocery store will never match Costco's per-unit pricing. Next up is the item that most preppers intellectually understand, but almost nobody stocks at the right quantity. Number 3. Bulk bouillon in the large format, chicken and beef combined. Bouillon is consistently overlooked in serious food stockpiles, and that oversight becomes critically apparent very quickly. Here is something most preparedness content skips over entirely. A fact that changes how you think about food storage. Rice, beans, oats, and canned protein are survivable in terms of calories, but they become almost impossible to eat every day. There's a well-documented psychological effect that builds during extended periods of restricted eating variety. It is not hunger, it is monotony. It quietly wears down the mood of every person in a household before anyone names it. Research on morale during extended food restriction, including military and humanitarian contexts, shows a clear pattern. Flavor variety is consistently identified as one of the most effective practical interventions available in those situations. A single cube of bouillon transforms water and rice into something the body and mind will actually accept and want. Canned beans simmered with bouillon become a meal. Canned vegetables and bouillon broth become actual soup. One ingredient functions as a flavor multiplier across your entire pantry. Bouillon does not solve monotony, but slows the erosion. The cost efficiency is almost impossible to match. 1 bouillon cube produces 1 cup of broth for roughly 5 cents. Canned broth costs around $2 per can for the same volume. That is 40 times the cost for an identical result. Costco's bulk bouillon format is being rationalized out as SKU reduction pressure hits the dry goods category. Flavor ingredient cost. Salt, yeast extract, dried vegetable powders have all risen significantly across the board. When input costs rise and margins compress, low-velocity products are the first ones removed from the buying plan entirely. Stock multiple flavors, chicken, beef, and vegetable, because each one produces a meaningfully different meal experience. Number 2. Kirkland cooking spray in the large multi-can format. This one gets dismissed immediately when people hear it. And that dismissal is based on a misunderstanding of its actual value. Cooking spray is an aerosol product, and the aerosol manufacturing supply chain has been under significant pressure since 2021. Propellant costs, aluminum can costs, and valve component costs have all increased by 30 to 50% over the past 3 years. When aerosol production costs rise, manufacturers reduce their SKU count and cut the lowest margin formats first. Large multi-can formats are consistently the first format cut because they represent the lowest per-unit margin at retail. Costco's multi-can cooking spray packs have already moved from $8 to $10 up to $14 to $16, where still available. Here is the dimension of cooking spray that most people never think about until they actually need it in a crisis. When cooking on a camp stove, outdoor grill, or improvised heat source, non-stick coating prevents catastrophic food waste. In a situation where every calorie matters, food sticking and burning to a pan represents a real and significant loss. A single can of cooking spray contains enough for several hundred individual cooking applications at normal usage rates. It also functions as a lubricant for mechanical equipment, a rust inhibitor on tools, and a silicone substitute for stuck zippers. Most people will never need those secondary uses, but they become relevant quickly when circumstances change for extended periods. Sealed cans maintain pressure and quality for 2 to 3 years under standard storage conditions without any maintenance. Stock the multi-pack format now. This is one of the lowest cost per application items in the entire prepared pantry category. And number 1, the item with the clearest numbers, the strongest supply case, and the most urgency on this entire list. Number 1, Kirkland tomato paste in the large multi-can case format. This one catches members off guard every single time because tomato paste has been a reliable Costco staple for decades. Start with one number, a single number that explains exactly what is happening to the U.S. processed tomato supply. 95% of all processed tomatoes in the United States are grown in a single geographic region, California's Central Valley. Not roughly, not approximately, 95% of the country's entire processed tomato supply comes from one concentrated area. That region is currently under simultaneous pressure from prolonged drought, water restrictions, and labor cost increases. Here is what makes this genuinely difficult to fix. Because production is so geographically concentrated, there is no backup. You cannot shift sourcing to processors in another region when California output drops. Those processors do not exist. Smaller tomato producers across the Central Valley are scaling back acreage or leaving the business entirely. Steel and aluminum packaging costs have also risen substantially, compressing margins on canned tomato products across the board. When margins tighten, food companies make a predictable move. They prioritize high-margin products and cut low-margin ones. Small cans of tomato paste are low-margin. They are frequently among the first items cut when production capacity is constrained. Grocery procurement managers are already describing what this looks like in plain terms at the warehouse receiving level. Back orders running 6 weeks or longer. Partial shipments that sell out within hours of arrival at distribution centers. Corporate guidance telling buyers not to expect normal inventory levels on this category for the foreseeable future. Here is why tomato paste earns the #1 position on this list above everything else already covered. Tomato paste is the one shelf-stable ingredient that fundamentally transforms everything else you have stored. Rice and beans become chili, canned vegetables become soup. Pasta goes from flat and forgettable to something people want to eat. In a long stretch of limited variety, that transformation matters more than most people realize until they are actually in that situation. It also functions as a concentrated source of lycopene and antioxidants that are hard to find in other shelf-stable formats. The shelf life on properly sealed canned tomato paste runs 2 to 5 years under reasonable storage conditions. Buy the case format at Costco now while it is still available. This is the item with the most urgency on this list. Here is what ties all 14 of these items together and why this specific list looks the way it does. Costco operates on a model that requires consistent bulk supply at price points its margins and its members can sustain. When supply chains become volatile and margin pressure increases simultaneously, Costco makes one predictable decision. It discontinues the item, reduces the format size, or replaces it with a different product at a higher per-unit price. And when Costco does that, the item you were counting on at that price point simply stops existing in that form. Each item on this list fills a specific nutritional or practical function that standard pantry staples do not cover. Rice provides carbohydrates and almost no fat. Canned vegetables provide micronutrients and minimal caloric density. Beans provide protein but need fat, flavor, and variety to remain sustainably edible for more than a few consecutive days. The items on this list, the fats, the complete proteins, the flavor bases, the vitamin sources, are the ones that matter. They're what turns a raw calorie count into an actual functioning diet for a real household over an extended period. Calories alone do not sustain cognitive function, immune response, morale, or physical performance over time. It is also worth being direct about what this video is not saying and what it is not asking you to do. This is not a prediction of collapse. It is not an argument for building a years-long extreme stockpile of anything. It is an observation about real, documented supply and pricing trends that are already visible and already in motion. And it is a practical case for building a modest rotating reserve before the items on this list become harder to find. The approach does not need to be dramatic or expensive. On your next 3 Costco runs, add 2 items from this list. 2 items per trip, 3 trips. At a regular Costco budget, that addition is barely noticeable to your wallet. Done consistently, you will look at your pantry after the 3rd trip and find you have built something real. Not a stockpile built on fear. A practical, rotating reserve that insulates your household from disruptions already becoming routine. The people in the best position 6 months from now are not the ones who react when shelves are visibly empty. They are not the ones who panic when the news starts covering it and the prices have already spiked past the point of value. They are the ones who acted when things still looked fine, when the gaps were small, when acting was still easy, when the window was still open. That window is right now, and it is smaller than it was 6 months ago. Here is the complete list one more time so you can take it directly into your next warehouse run. Kirkland canned chicken. Kirkland extra virgin olive oil. Kirkland grass-fed butter. Kirkland wild Alaskan salmon. Kirkland freeze-dried fruit. Kirkland raw honey. Kirkland coconut oil. Kirkland evaporated milk. Kirkland instant oats. Kirkland natural peanut butter. Kirkland solid white albacore tuna. Kirkland bulk bouillon. Kirkland cooking spray. Kirkland tomato paste. 14 items, 2 per trip, 3 trips. The decision to start this week cost almost nothing. The decision to wait cost more than most people understand. Until the moment it is already too late to get ahead of it. And by then, the pricing alone has already made the decision for you. One last thing. Which item on this list are you picking up first? Drop it in the comments right now. It is a good way to make sure you actually follow through rather than just watching and moving on to the next video.